How have you seen, you talked about a nationwide average. How have you particularly seen like Ohio and Summit County, um, or Northeast Ohio in general kind of shifting?
Yeah, it's in my mind, inventory has increased substantially. In Northeast Ohio, in 2021 and 2022, we basically had virtually nothing. We were scraping for inventory. And now I think there's options on the table. I remember back in 21 and 22, we used to sell it instantly, sometimes even before
Hmm.
we had the opportunity to fully market it or properly get
Yeah.
everything into place. And now we're seeing it take weeks and months, again, talking about going back to that new normal. I did find some data from Ohio Realtors, and currently the average days on market in Northeast Ohio specifically has gone from 10 to 15 days during 2022 to the end of November 2025. It was closer to 50 to 70 days on market. And that's specific in Northeast Ohio, but depending on area and price point, of course. So it's interesting to me because buyers who haven't actively been looking since 2022 or 23, I mean, I heard stories, people were just stopping. They weren't even trying. They just backed away because they didn't want to
Hmm.
fight those fights. And now if they are coming back here in 2026, it's a fundamentally different market. People have time to think. They have time to compare properties. They have time to get inspections done properly and to negotiate.
Hmm.
Everybody has time to breathe. And that's not something we've had in years. So it's a real advantage for anybody serious about, finding the right home. And so to me, that's what I'm seeing in the big market shift here in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, more choices gives you a little bit more time to go through options, and actually you probably should take a little bit more time to go through the options. You don't have to jump at the first
Hmm.
house that you see anymore. Um, so let's talk about some of the reasons that a house might sit.
Hmm.
So, obviously there's the time of year, winter months going into spring are historically just slower to start with.
Sure.
You have holidays in there, you have cold weather and storms we've kind of already discussed. Um, so, off the top of my head, a couple other ones that I can think of are there's, you know, the house could just be priced wrong to start with.
Hmm.
I think not only buyers are looking at 22, 23, sellers are as well. And there's still a lot of mindset that says we can throw a house out at any price and
Yeah.
people are going to jump at it. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. There could be marketing issues, where maybe they just got bad pictures, or,
Hmm.
they're just happen to hit the market at the wrong time. Just bad timing. You could put a house on the market and something, all of a sudden you have a 3-day snow emergency and you missed that
Right.
prime time. And then there's also, I mean, obviously, some houses just actually have problems.
Sure.
There's a lot of,
Sure.
not every house is perfect. We'll just
Yeah.
put it that way. So, are there any other kind of thoughts that you have as like why houses are sitting?
I think you hit it right on the head there. And, I hate to throw people in our industry under the bus, but I'm just going to do it. I just want to emphasize sometimes it can really be an agent issue. You need to know who you're hiring. You need to know is the agent full time? Do they actually understand the market and how real estate works? Because a good agent will potentially find these red flags for you ahead of time. Now, whether or not the seller may listen is a whole separate, we could do a whole
Yeah,
nother episode on just that.
seller issues are
But
real.
they totally are. We could write a whole book, not even do an episode on that. I think that, and then the other big one is that some condition issues just don't show up in photos, but they're obvious in person, like a
Hmm,
questionable foundation wall, or like something people don't think about, like odors.
sure.
Those don't show up in marketing pictures, or maybe questionable roof or something like that. So, one thing I was actually thinking about was the listing we have right now. Um, when we went out on site and we had that big piece of failing stucco on the side of the property. Rather than let that just become a mystery cost and let the seller deal with it as it shows up or have it scare buyers away without feedback, we were smart enough to be able to help the seller get in front of it. And we can't make repairs right now. And maybe he doesn't want to, but at least we got a quote. So the mystery of that cost is gone. We are setting that listing up for more success. So I think, yeah, to just the big things for me are make sure, agency, performance, and then understanding conditions that may not show up in marketing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your pricing strategy
Hmm.
at the very beginning of your listing is so much more important now
Oh my gosh,
than
yeah.
than it was 2 to 3 years ago, where there's one thing to test the high end of the market, but you really have to look at what houses are actually selling for right now
Hmm.
and be honest about where you can put things, because you know once that initial week, maybe 2 weeks is gone
Yeah.
and you're overpriced, having that house, even with a price adjustment, sometimes it doesn't get noticed by those same people because they've either moved on, found other properties, found a different area that they liked. Maybe they were considering,
Hmm.
West Akron, and then someone showed them Barberton. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, Barberton's kind of nice. We should maybe look at
Hmm.
more
Better
houses over
price
there
points.
or whatever. And you
Hmm.
missed that opportunity when if you'd have been priced correctly up front, you might have
Oh
just
yeah.
snagged that person on that first showing. Um,
100%. I mean, yeah, overpricing does so much damage. Um, like you said, when you have that first week, you have maximum visibility, you have your most serious buyers, the algorithms are showing it, faster on the
mhm.
internet, and you
I
lose
think agents are
all of
excited.
that. You can,
You
yeah.
have agents that are hitting it, and I think agents, you talk about, we're not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I think it's easy for agents also to see that house that's been sitting for
Yeah.
30 to 60 days and have a predisposed negative mindset,
Hmm.
and maybe you know not be as excited about it when they go to show it.
Sure. Or they
um
might, it should never be done, but they might steer people away from it. And that high price point can send a negative message. Like you can falsely make it look like you're just trying to be a greedy seller or that you're not going to be easy to negotiate with. I mean, once the damage is done, that's the other part. Like you can't undo that. You can't unring that bell. So like even when you do make a price correction, now it's a stale listing instead of
yeah,
a fresh, new, exciting opportunity.
yeah, you
So
can't go
yeah,
back.
it's so critical. So
So
critical.
we've
Hmm.
talked a lot about um kind of why houses and sitting, but at the very beginning we talked about how we kind of see these houses that have been sitting a lot longer as an opportunity for
Hmm.
people.
Totally.
Not all of them, but some of them.
Right.
So when you're looking at a house that's been sitting, what are kind of some things, if you were talking to a customer that was looking to buy, um, what would kind of be your pitch of why they should consider these houses that have been sitting a little bit longer? What's
Sure.
your advantage to them?
Well, I feel there's a few of them. And, like I said, perpetual optimist. But, when you've got a house that's been sitting 60 or 90 days or longer, in my experience, the sellers tend to become more motivated and more flexible if it's still on the market there when and where they can. Um, I did find an interesting data point on Zillow. Homes that have been on the market for more than 60 days will sell for an average of 5 to 7% below asking price compared to homes that are new on the market. So, like, for
Hmm.
example, on a $250,000 house, that's like a potential savings of twelve to $17,000, and you can use that
Good.
money to, maybe repaint or put your own touch on the property, or just keep that money in your pocket. I mean, nobody's going to say no to 12 or 15 grand in their pocket, right?
Sure, right.
So monetarily, there's an opportunity, but beyond price, um, you can negotiate more, I believe. Repairs, closing cost assistance, or if you have a contingency, like you need a longer closing timeline, You need 60 days instead of 30 or 45 days to close, or you want to negotiate in appliances and things like that. You often have a little bit more wiggle room when a seller has been like dealing with a bunch of showings and holding costs for months and they want to move on. I mean, I see that with our sellers all the time. Like once they finally make that commitment for their property to sell, they've been noodling the thought of selling their house for 2, 3, 4 months at this point. But it's,
Mhm.
and so when it becomes 60, 90 days for the seller, it feels like so much longer. So, I feel like they're often ready to be a bit more flexible with finding those right and qualified buyers. So yeah, those are a few of the wins that I can see.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things that I've always heard you say is that, sometimes you have to zig when other people are zagging, or,
Yeah.
you can find the best opportunities where you're looking where other people aren't looking, and but I think once again,
100%.
they're not all going to be winners. There are those,
Hmm.
zombie houses out there that are just not good.
Right. Yeah.
But you have to look at them to see, and sometimes these showings, I've done a lot of them where we walked in and, like you said, smell is a big one. I have a great story that I'll share another time probably, but it's, you can walk into a house and instantly know, and that it's not either the right layout or it smells funny or whatever. And I mean, and I do think that that depends on the seller. Or not the
Hmm.
seller, the buyer, sorry, where it depends on what they're looking for. If you're looking for I just want to unpack my boxes and move in and start living, or if you're looking to have a little bit more work to be done, if you're not willing to, if you're willing to or not willing to tear down wallpaper, some of those things,
Right.
are definitely out there too. But